My name is Sajid Ami. I am Deputy Executive Director at SDPI. I have three roles today's session. One is I'm your moderator and host for today's session. I've also been requested for some introductory remarks on the work that we have been doing. And my third introduction is that I've been leading this work on Doing Good Index from SDPI in collaboration with PCP. So these are my three roles that put me on the table here actually. But before I introduce the panel and some introduction of the work that we are doing, today's session is divided into two sort of subsections. The one is the technical presentation from Hong Kong State, coming from Anulay Devash. She is Director Research in CAPS, Center for Asian Philanthropy and Society. I hope I'm getting it right. And she has been, over the last couple of years, we have been working very closely with her, very instrumental in this work. If just I can summarize what this work is about, I hope all of you know much more than me. Coming from PCB, you must have been engaged in this work. So for those SDPIans who have not been directly engaged, and our speakers actually, the work is more or less can be summarized. It sort of assesses how conducive an environment in a country is to promote charitable sector, charity sector. It's it's ongoing in 17 different countries simultaneously. It's very heavily backed by data. The one sort of a key feature of this work that keep it separate from the others is it's not sort of a very qualitative or discussion loaded or intuition loaded work actually. It has a very in-depth, I remember one of the key concerns of civil society organizations that we reach for the data is that this is so lengthy questions and they really have to dig deep to their accounts to fill those questionnaires. And roughly many CSOs take around 1 month to fill that questionnaire because it needs to go back to your desk, to go back to your books, go back to your offices, and then. So whatever presentation will be coming from Hong Kong is actually that is backed by the data. And secondly, I think the one key element of this work is it is cross-country comparisons. It really gives you a strong foundation for cross-country comparisons. A same methodology, similar methodology applied across the 17 countries within almost the same time period. So no seasonalities, other things required. I mean, there, and so it comes the data and then CAPS take analysis and produce reports. From Pakistan, we are two partners who are working with CAPS. It is the Pakistan Center for Philanthropy, PCP, which is known as, which you can say is the mother organization for all the civil society organization work. It is the certification authority agency in Pakistan. And then very closely, I hope and I believe that this doing good work, reaching to these CSOs would have never been possible without PCBs. So excellent PCBs. They gave us a platform that we can reach to these CSOs. And this is the trust of CSOs on PCP, that they really bring them the inner out actually, data they do have, they bring it out. And we believe that your analysis is as good as your data is actually. And so this is, I think, the PCP's role is very central, and SDPI has also been the part of conducting survey. Umar was taking this exercise over the last couple of years, Umar Ayaz. So this is about the work. This is roughly fourth year. We will be into 23, 50 year most probably of this report. It's fourth or fifth. So it gives you also now a good benchmark over the time, what is happening over the last 5 years. And my final comment on this one is that I think we started this work pre-COVID, but I think one major element that has happened that really highlighted that how critical this work can be is the COVID-19, because it was the local networks, it was the local charity which actually reached to the household before the government actually, and sized the share of the local charity, local helping hands to each other was much larger than even the fiscal stimulus that government has brought in. So this really speaks that if any work can help promote conduciveness, if it can help policy changes, reforms at a macro level, even for example, we have a very key element on taxation policy, how tax can support charities and CSR and other things. So this will be really, so I hope to have an engaging presentation and discussion and comments from our speakers. Before I invite opening remarks, I just want that we need to keep the timelines. We will be having opening remarks, welcome remarks, and then the technical presentation, and then we will be getting back to our panelists, speakers for their comments. They have roughly 7.5 minutes, 7.5 minutes for the first round of comments. So we will be really testing your summary skills. We know it's difficult on such a long report, 7.5 minutes. But we will be Punjab University test pressy writing skills. We will be testing summary skills. So let me now with this invite Dr. Shazia Maksud Saiba, Executive Director, PCP, for her opening remarks. To you, please.
Thank you so much. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. First of all, I think I would like to thank SDPI for hosting this jointly at the SDPI venue. And I would also like to actually commend both the research teams, both at SDPI and of course at PCP for undertaking this work. I think this is now our third year that we are doing this report with CAPS. And it's very interesting to see how economies in the region, the developing economies, the emerging economies in the region are doing on the enabling environment provision to their CSOs. I think it is also an opportunity to talk about how Pakistan is doing and what kind of challenges NPOs face in Pakistan. I think PCP needs no introduction. People in the room know PCP well, and I think the panelists also know PCP well. The only thing that I can add here, perhaps as a reminder, is that we believe that we provide a convening space. We provide a voice. We are facilitators. We are here to highlight and celebrate and recognize our NPOs, our local NPOs especially, who do amazing work across Pakistan. I think the NPO sector in Pakistan is currently a very strong and viable safety net provision for the poorest of the poor. And these organizations across the country, I mean, we use the term NPO as a not-for-profit organization because of the tax terminology being used. Otherwise, the nomenclature commonly used is the NGOs, and for the purposes of the study, I think CAPS prefers to use the word SPO. So all synonyms, nothing to be confused about. We are talking about the same good people doing amazing work across Pakistan. So I think CAPS officially launched this on June 8, 2022. I'm right. And forgive me if I mispronounce your name. And I think the major themes and findings from this particular study, it covers issues surrounding social sector policies, funding challenges, and assessing the impact of social sector investments. So I think in more detail, she will be speaking about it. But from the PCP end, I think the two partners on ground, SDPI and PCP, we were both given a task, I would say, to reach out to approximately 63 SDOs each. And that's where we collected the data and the survey. And the data provides an opportunity to analyze some areas in the context of not only the country, but also in the Asian region. When I was looking at the 18 economies, I could see that how enabling environment is also kind of, we can peg it to the economic development, or we can say the economic prosperity in the region. If you look at Singapore and Taiwan, I think rich economies, they have a very flexible and facilitative giving environment. If you come to then the other giants, Hong Kong, China, Japan, Korea, Malaysia, all the Far East countries, they seem to have, they are doing better. And if you come to the SAARC countries, with the exception of Bangladesh and Sri Lanka, you will see Pakistan along with India are doing okay. So one trend that becomes very visible is that in the SAARC region, we don't stand out like a sore thumb. We are really at parity with what the other countries are in terms of regulation and enabling environment they are doing in the region. From the Pakistan side, I think this time the floods and especially COVID also highlighted the fact that the only flexible, very, I should say, quick deployment of help, of relief, of welfare that happened was through the NPOs. And you could see them reaching out right down at the grassroots level. And in the times of flood, you could actually see organizations such as Al-Khidmat and other NPOs reaching out and deploying very, very quickly. So I think this speaks volume to the work that the NPOs do. And I think it's time that the enabling environment or the environment in which these NPOs, the local NPOs work, I think it should become more flexible. It should be more accommodating. It should learn from other economies in the region. And so that these organizations are able to do that good work and continue to do that good work across Pakistan. So I think that's my beeper. So I will just quickly say that thank you so much. And I hope that the data generated from this study will help us to even think differently and perhaps look at the different other aspects to improve the NPO environment in Pakistan. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Fazia. Very brief, yet very comprehensive summary work that we have been doing and why this work is important. Let me now move to technical presentation. But before that, I can see that Ali Kamal Sahab has joined us. Ali Kamal is Chief SDGs Pakistan. Ali, welcome. I hope you can hear us.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you very much.
So, Anilete, I'm coming to you now. My biggest fear was that if I can pronounce your name right or not. I'm trying my best. I hope.
You did very well. Absolutely. Yes.
And you are the person of the day, actually. We're all here to listen to you. So over to you for technical presentation.
Okay, well, thank you, Sajid and Shazia for your introductory remarks. I'm absolutely delighted to be here today, and thank you for hosting this event. We are extremely grateful to our partner organizations, SDPI and PCP, not only for organizing this event, but for your partnership and commitment towards the DGI over the years. As Sajid already mentioned, it's not an easy survey. The data collection process is not easy, and we wouldn't be able to do that with really the dedication on the ground. So thank you for that. And hopefully I can share some of the insights to really help explain Pakistan's performance. So let me just pull up the presentation here. Let me just make sure. Are you all able to see the screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. So I'm here today to talk to you about the Doing Good Index, but let me just very briefly take a step back and just explain who we are and what we do. So we are the Center for Asian Philanthropy and Society, CAPS. We are based in Hong Kong, but our work covers 18 countries and economies in Asia. That's 16 countries in Hong Kong and Taiwan. And our mission is really to increase the quantity and quality of private social investment going towards doing good in Asia. And we do this through research, policy research, applied research, and bespoke advisory research. And our approach to this is really to look at this from the perspective of what works on the ground in Asia. Things don't always work the same in Asia as they do in the West, and the models that originate from the West don't obviously or always resonate here in Asia. So we really try and look and understand the models and methods that work in, say, Korea or Pakistan and China across the region. Our flagship report is the Doing Good Index, and as mentioned, this is the third iteration. The original report came out in 2018, the second one in 2020, and then in June this year we launched the third iteration. Now, as mentioned already by Shazia, that really the COVID pandemic really helped show the importance of the social sector on the ground, and in recent times with the floods. And people, organizations, and companies really stepped up, often in innovative and almost always in collaborative ways. And as we are emerging from this, we are now looking at the kind of the new normal and how we want to, the world that we want to live in. And one of the problems is that the pandemic really increased the social and economic disparities. Approximately 120 million people have been pushed into extreme poverty, 2/3 of which are estimated to be in Southeast Asia, East Asia, and the Pacific. And while hundreds of millions of people lost their jobs and were struggling to just get by, many of the rich got a lot richer, and really emphasizing that income disparity gap. We know we need to do more. We know we need to work together more effectively and more efficiently. But how do we do that? And one of the problems that we see across the region, and this is particularly true in Pakistan as well, is a trust deficit. There is a lack of trust for donors to give to the sector because they don't trust the system or the organizations to receive their money. But there is also a lack of trust between organizations and government and the other way around. And this is, as I said, not unique to Pakistan, but it is also holds true in Pakistan. The good thing is that the Doing Good Index really shows us a way forward and how we can address the issues. And so I want to talk you through some of both Pakistan's performance, as well as some of the ways that it can improve moving forward. Before I do that, let me just very briefly mention a few points about the Doing Good Index. Sajid already pointed to a few of these, but the Doing Good Index covers 18 economies. Myanmar this year couldn't participate in the full DGI, but is included in a special kind of focus section. But what is really unique to the DGI, the Doing Good Index, is the robustness of the data. And there is really no one else in the region or in the world that has this kind of set of data of the social sector in Asia. We surveyed, with the help of our partner organizations, over 2,000 what we call SDOs, but they are the same as CSOs, MPOs, social sector organizations. And with the help of our partners, we also interviewed 126 experts. These include tax accountants, lawyers, policymakers, experts in the field, working in the field, to really help really fill in the gaps and really make sure that we have a really good understanding of what is going on. And the Doing Good Index is made up of 4 key sections. 3 of them have to do with government: the regulatory framework, the tax and fiscal policies, and government procurement. The 4th focuses on the kind of societal embrace of philanthropy, of the social sector. How much do people, organizations, and companies and government appreciate and engage with the sector? And this year, we also had a section on COVID, where we really asked the SDOs about the impact of COVID and how it had affected them over the years and their needs moving forward. So this is the index. Let me just point out that there are in fact 5 clusters, but there is no economy that has met the 5th kind of gold standard of doing excellent. And so there's room to grow for everyone. Even Singapore and Taiwan can still do better. And let me also just point out that the listed countries and economies here are listed in alphabetical order. As you can see, Pakistan sits in the doing okay cluster, and in fact dropped from doing better in 2020 into the doing okay cluster. Some may find this surprising, others may not. But as I walk you through the findings and point to some of the areas and problems in Pakistan, you may better understand what is happening and understand the performance better. Before we go into that, I'd like to just take a step back and talk about the impact of the COVID. And Shazia, you already mentioned that, that COVID really brought out the best in social service delivery organizations. They were the first on the ground. They were the ones that were responding and really delivering the services that the government was unable to meet. And we saw that too. And as you can see, the number of SDOs that were on the ground supporting these efforts is much higher than the Asian average. But they were doing these kind of tasks and initiatives above and beyond what they are normally doing. And so at the same time of increasing their products and services, we also saw, and the SDOs reported this, a decrease in funding to these organizations. And as you can imagine, this really put additional pressure on these organizations, an increase in demand, yet a decrease of income. But it's all doom and gloom. Actually, it really had a positive effect as well. Seeing these organizations working on the ground and being really the first responders helped improve the perception of SDOs. 83% of SDOs, when asked, felt that this perception of the social sector improved, and 66% felt that very optimistic about the future of the sector. So I think that's a really positive takeaway, and we'll talk a little bit more later about some of the opportunities coming out of this. We also asked the SDOs about their biggest needs. And as you can see, funding, collaborating with others, and staff. And I'll address each of these a little bit more as I move through the presentation. So Pakistan is doing okay, but how can it do better? Well, I've already mentioned and briefly touched upon the trust issue, and I've mentioned it a little bit, but what do we actually mean with that? Now, in one of the questions in the surveys, we asked the organizations if they feel trusted by their communities, and only just over half say that they feel trusted by their community. And one of the contributing factors to this are public scandals. Now, this is not unique to Pakistan. Scandals involving the social sector happen in many countries and economies in Asia, but they have a profound impact. Unlike in the private sector, there are scandals with companies all the time, making the news and making headlines, but one scandal doesn't taint the whole sector like it does when it comes to the nonprofit sector. And so this is one thing that we have seen in Pakistan, and it is a contributing factor to this eroding sense of trust. It is impacting how people feel about the sector, and it is impacting the way people give to the sector. But what can be done? One area that really can help this is regulations. Regulations serve as a very important tool to help facilitate the operation of organizations, as well as build transparency and accountability. And we often talk about regulations as use this analogy of cholesterol. There is good cholesterol and there is bad cholesterol. Good regulations allow for the smooth operation of organizations. They help build this accountability and transparency and really help build trust. Bad regulations, even really well-intentioned regulations and policies, place undue additional burden and administrative responsibilities on organizations. When we look at regulations in Pakistan, it is quite a mixed bag. There's some good and there's some bad. The registration process leaves some area of improvement. It is one of the most burdensome registration processes across Asia. It not only takes more clearances than the Asian averages, it also takes significantly longer. And what many of you also probably know is that an additional factor is the multiple layers of government interfaces. There's the district level, the provincial level, and then the federal level. And there are also multiple registration laws, making it very complicated to navigate that system. It is therefore unsurprising that almost 3/4 of SDOs say that they find laws pertaining to the social sector difficult to understand. And so this is an area where Pakistan can really improve. And they can do so by engaging directly with SDOs, asking them what is working, what is not working, and listening to the challenges that they are facing. There is a positive point to this, though, that Pakistan is one of 2 economies that has really taken the regulation into their own hands through the self-regulating mechanism of PCP certification, which the government has taken on to granting tax-exempt status. The other country that has a similar but slightly different model is the Philippines, but we are seeing a lot of interest in this kind of self-regulating mechanism, and hopefully we will see more of that over the years in other countries. As I mentioned earlier, funding is a problem, and this is always a problem. And for those of you working in the sector, I don't think that comes as a surprise. The majority of organizations were cash-strapped before the pandemic and have become even more so after, through additional expenses and declining funding. In Pakistan too, we saw a really big shift in the makeup of an SDO's budget. Across Asia in general, we have seen a declining level of foreign funding over the years. This has not been recent, but we've been tracking this over the years. And there are several reasons for this, and most are applicable to Pakistan as well. As countries are becoming more affluent and moving up to a more kind of higher economic status, traditional overseas development aid is being redirected to different regions. There is also, whether fair or unfair, a concern around terrorism funding, which has, in some economies in Asia, resulted in declining foreign funding into countries. But the flow of foreign funding has also been affected by measures put in place by governments themselves. And we also see this in Pakistan, and the requirement of registration in order to receive foreign funding has made it a lot more difficult for organizations to receive this type of funding. And finally, there was COVID. COVID really kind of made funding much more local, hyper-local, we tend to say. People were funding in their communities rather than giving across borders. So SDOs have had to adjust to this change, and they have to look at other funding mechanisms. And they have had to look at domestic funding, government funding, funding from individuals, and funding from companies. Now, the good news is that domestic giving as a proportion of an SDO's budget, and we can see that in the previous slide, has actually, no, domestic giving actually hasn't gone up, apologies. Oh no, it has gone up, sorry. It has actually gone up quite significantly, which is a really good sign. But the feeling of domestic giving is not felt by organizations. When asked if they feel that domestic giving is low, 83% say that they feel that this is low, and this is really a prevailing sentiment. We also asked them why, and you can see the stated reasons. And this really aligns with the findings from PCP's 2021 State of Philanthropy report, which found that religious giving is the primary motivator for giving in Pakistan, and that giving to organizations, in fact, is not very common in part due to the lack of trust. And so this really kind of resonates with that. This doesn't mean that Pakistan is not philanthropic. In fact, they are very philanthropic, but it's not being directed through the kind of more systemic or systematic framework of charitable giving. In order to leverage this kind of domestic giving, it is important to build trust. If you don't trust an organization, you are not going to give to it. And one way to encourage this and to also build trust is through tax incentives. Now, I know tax and talking about tax is not particularly interesting, and I'll try and keep this very brief, but tax incentives are in fact very important, and especially important in Asia. First of all, of course, tax incentives and benefits and reducing your tax bill is attractive. It literally puts money back into your pockets. But in Asia, where governments signaling really matters and companies and individuals tend to work very much aligned with the government, a tax incentives gives a very strong signal of support and encouragement for giving to the sector. And so in Pakistan, as in with many other countries, we see that although they offer a 100% rate for deductions, they limit the income and profit eligible for these deductions, which is kind of sending a conflicting message. And there is room for opportunity to change there. And by comparison, if you look at Singapore, they have a rate of 250% with no limit on the amount eligible. Claiming these tax incentives is also considered very difficult, and 63% of SDOs say that they find this difficult. As mentioned in one of the earlier slides, the SDO said that they want more collaboration with others. The social sector issues, especially now in light of the recent floods, they are massive, and they are too big for one sector on their own to deal with. And we need to work together. But as with funding, if you don't trust each other, there is a real kind of problem, and it does not facilitate collaborations. So what can different sectors do to help overcome this? Government has a very important role to play, and I already mentioned the regulations to help build trust and the tax incentives, but there are other ways. First of all, recognizing doing good stimulates it. Pakistan does recognize this and is one of 7 economies with a nationwide giving day. It can also really spur kind of support and trust by procuring directly from social sector organizations. It really is kind of a win-win-win. The government can utilize the skills and the expertise of these SDOs, while SDOs can benefit from having a very kind of sustainable income stream. And it really signals this support to others. If the government is working with these organizations, then surely we can too. But there is room for improvement here in Pakistan, and the number of SDOs currently receiving income from procurement is only 18%. And finally, governments can engage directly with SDOs through policy consultations and listening to what is really needed on the ground and ensuring that policies and regulations are aligned with their needs. Companies also have a role to play. First of all, and most kind of intuitive, they can provide funding. Corporate funding is an important source of funding that does leave room for improvement in Pakistan. But beyond funding, the skills transfer is a very key component. Through corporate volunteers and sitting on boards, companies can bring with them and share skills such as legal knowledge, accounting, business acumen, IT skills, and SDOs can really benefit from this. They often don't have the resources to have these skills in-house, and so this is a very important mechanism for building the capacity of SDOs, as well as ensuring accountability and transparency and the smooth operation of these organizations. I mentioned earlier about the opportunity, and I think this is a really important point to make, that even though Pakistan dropped, I think the takeaway I really have from Pakistan's performance is that there is a lot of opportunity to bounce back to doing better. There is a lot of the perception of the sector has improved, but there's also a lot of interest. The interest of young people in working for the sector is the highest across Asia, and it's really considered a viable career option for young people. SDOs in Pakistan also don't struggle as much as many other organizations with recruiting and retaining staff. A contributing factor might be that there's less of a perception that SDOs working in the nonprofit sector should earn less. So let me just wrap up here, because I know we, as Sajid said, we are on a strict timeline, although I'm already quite over. But we need to work together, and the different sectors need to also act independently and together. The government in particular can really improve on the regulatory side. And we do welcome the opportunity to work with our partners and others working in the sector to share the DGI data and the messaging on how this can be improved. And to really signal to the support to show that the social sector is not the enemy, but a valuable partner in addressing social needs. And the private sector has a role to play, funding and sharing of skills, but the social sector itself also has a role to play, to share their stories of impact, to show what they are doing. They are already doing that on the ground, but to share this to a broader audience can really also help make a big difference. So with that, I'd like to say thank you for the opportunity again to speak. We have our report available on our website, as well as an interactive microsite where you can compare Pakistan's data with that of other Asian economies, as well as with Pakistan across the years. So I do encourage you to visit that, and I'll share the links with this later on. So thank you.
Thank you, Analote, for leaving us on a very high note. There are opportunities as well after taking us very deep into challenges. The beautiful Venn diagram, the last slide, but I think that is the most complex Venn diagram.
Well, the reality of it is,
exactly.
in theory, it's easy.
Yeah, you draw it very beautifully, but I think it will be a very difficult task. But I think that is actually the key message, that it is the public sector, private sector, and the social sector which has to engage like a Venn diagram to make this social sector, charity sector work. With this, let me now move towards our special comments on this one. And in the meantime, I'm also joined by Dr. Mohammad Amjad Saqib Saab, founder and chairman of OWAD. No introduction needed, sir. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm also joined by Mr. Naveed Mukhtar, Secretary Income Tax Budget. Sir, we will be coming you with the tax question. That how you, but let me begin with the Ms. Sabira Qureshi Saiba. She is founder, managing trustee, JAQ for Education Trust. So while you can sort of comment on the presentation, do let us know about your trust as well, and particularly if you can sort of reflect on the trust gap that the presenter has highlighted as a big challenge for the sector actually. But you can touch upon any issues that you like. 7.5 minutes. Thank you. Over to you, please.
Thank you very much. आवाज आ रही है मेरी?
जी बिल्कुल.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Annalette, for that very, very highly informative and thought-provoking presentation. I mean, there's a lot of points in there which for each one of us to take away. I'm speaking more from the perspective of an actual practitioner on the ground, have been managing this trust for the last 27 years. And it's So I've seen the change over the decades, and many of the things you've talked about resonate with a lot of us. So the point that was given to me was basically to talk about the ecosystem. So I'd like to talk more about, and I'm so happy to hear that you also emphasize the collaboration bit. Shazia also mentioned, and thank you, Shazia, for acknowledging the tremendous work that NPOs are doing. The ecosystem at the moment that we are talking about, and because I'm working in the education space, I'd like to take it more from that perspective, what's happening in terms of the ecosystem from the education perspective and how those partnerships and collaboration is working. You said about the trust. I'll come to the trust deficit. It's actually a mixed bag, because there's the vision out there that, NGOs are just there to paisa khana, literally, for your thing is just they're out there to make money for themselves. Whereas there is also the perception that they're doing a lot of good solid work on the ground. And this came out much more strongly during COVID, as has been pointed out. From an education perspective, the need for collaboration becomes so much more greater because the challenges are acute. I mean, we have what is really known as an education emergency in the country. The stark figure still remaining that 22.8 million children who are out of school. And we are all trying to tackle that in our own ways, whether it's a tiny amount or a huge amount, we're all addressing that issue, trying to get those children into school and making sure that those who are already in school are learning and gaining something from that. So going back to collaboration, the ecosystem talks about, we've been looking at public-private partnerships for a long, long time. It was the buzzword, a catchword for a long time. And it still is. The government has been looking at different approaches, and it's been doing so for a long time. More recently, they've been trying to outsource service delivery. It has taken different approaches, whether they're outsourcing management of schools or offering a voucher system where they're actually paying private schools to take in students, or the adopt a school program. There's been different kinds of approaches. And again, we come back to that issue, the financing, as well as the human resource constraints. But financing is one of the big ones. And what's the long-term strategy? How are we improving the ecosystem? Can we go beyond these models? Can we lift the entire system? And what can NPOs bring to the table? And here I'm using Shazia's terminology, NPO, because we're talking from the perspective of a non-profit here. So just a few suggestions on what NPOs can bring. NPOs have the ability to experiment and innovate much more than the government does, particularly a more agile organization like ours. We have 4,000 children in school across 10 schools. For us to experiment, to innovate, to come up with, to be a lab for good practices is much easier than for the government to do. So one way to collaborate is to use organizations, NPOs like ours, where we can pilot stuff, good practices, innovative ideas to enhance quality of learning, and then scale it up. So, we can be the lab for innovation. And just to give an example, recently our organization partnered with an international organization, the LEAPS program, which has researchers from SERP in Lahore, Harvard University, Pomona College, and Berkeley University. Now that particular project is being rolled out as a large-scale experiment in 1,000 schools across KP. So these are the kind of things we can do. We experimented with different learning approaches during COVID when schools were shut down. EdTech is coming up with innovation. The second thing we can do is use schools, social sector as feeder schools to address the out-of-school population, because we are working with completely out-of-the-box approaches, and they're working very, very well. NPO remains in community engagement, community mobilization, getting children, street children into school, retaining them in school, and then mainstreaming them into formal schools. Government has not been able to actually access these children and retain them. But in all of this, the government needs to be flexible. It needs to be less rigid in its approach. This is where we find that the rigidity of government systems and structures doesn't allow for that innovation to be absorbed, for that experimentation, for those good practices. So they need to be much, much more open, and it's sort of cognizant of the fact that out of the box, that severe problems need out of the box solutions. Just to give another example, when we bring in children, street children into school, they can be any age. So when we mainstream them into the regular school system, they say, sorry, but this kid is overage, we can't take them. Now that's a small issue which can be adjusted through a simple policy. But that kind of flexibility is just not there. It's lacking. And there are dozens of such practical issues that I could mention, examples where we come up with a burdensome bureaucratic structure which does not lend itself to that kind of agility to change and move. The other thing that I want to stress upon is the collaboration. We talk about collaboration. It's collaboration across board. Different actors in the ecosystem, public, private, for-profit, non-profit, can come together to build systems and create processes to achieve the desired results. Without systems and processes, it's all very well the government's different approaches, adopt a school, take over the management of a school, but we need to improve the entire ecosystem. And for that, we need to build processes, build in ways of working together. And I'm sorry here, again, I would say, I don't want to make sweeping generalizations, but we need much more collaboration even amongst the nonprofit sector itself. So we need to not just talk to each other, share experiences, but to actually find ways to work together, because the problems are huge. And unless we can work in a more collaborative way, we're all going to be sticking to our own little nooks and crannies, and will not be able to lift the system in its entirety. So it's just one last thing. I don't want to I don't want to kind of touch on a controversy, very highly controversial topic, and I don't want to get into any controversy, but we need to work together to build a solid, useful curriculum in the education sector. That's again an area that we could all come together, talk, work, share our experiences. What is it that is needed for both the teachers to teach efficiently and children to benefit from? At the moment, the curriculum that's being taught just goes above the head of the teachers, and the children are not really absorbing that either. So those are the kind of things we need to focus on, not just building foundational skills, which include both literacy and numeracy on the one hand, but most importantly, social emotional learning for children. We know these are key to success in life, and all data reinforces this. So I'll say that over the years, we've seen a change. The community in the beneficiaries, the target group for whom we work, have also changed significantly. The demand for education is huge, and they also have we've built enormous trust capital over 27 years. They trust us. And I think that is one of the strengths of the nonprofit sector, which the government needs to tap into. And find ways to build on that. So that's basically, I think, what I'm happy to answer any more questions, but I think I've also overstepped my time a little bit.
Yeah, thank you. No, it's a very important issue, so pressing issues. We can continue to listen to you. If we don't have 4:30 another session starting, so my apologies for intervening to the rest of the speakers as well in advance, in anticipation of interventions. So let me now move to the next speaker, Naveed Mukhtar Saab. Naveed Saab, when I was reading this report, you and your department, taxation, is coming in 3 roles. It's a challenge, barrier as well. It is a catalyzer as well. It can catalyze the doing good, giving good givings. And I think this is the opportunity as well, that a taxation, a tax policy, which is supporting the good giving can be the biggest change. So over to you, next 7.5 minutes, please.
Thank you for inviting me. I would like to highlight plenty of tax exemptions, concessions to persons that are involved in social sector development in Pakistan. There is a class 66 in second schedule of the income tax ordinance that grant complete exemption on income of highly regarded persons that are involved in social sector development. To name a few, these are Sindh Institute of Urology and Transplantation, Institute of Aga Khan Development Network, Shaukat Khanam Memorial Trust, Abdul Sattar ED Foundation, Indus Hospital Health Network, Citizen Foundation, Sundar Foundation, etc. Then there is another class of person who are eligible for 100% tax credit against their income. In other words, their income is tax-free, but subject to fulfillment of certain conditions mentioned in Section 100C of the Income Tax Ordinance. These organizations are Al-Shifa Trust, Balkhi Foundation, Fatmid Foundation, Gulab Devi Chest Hospital, Pakistan Poverty Alleviation Fund, National Rural Sport Program, Kidney Center, Postgraduate Training Institute, Begum Akhtar Rukhsana Memorial Trust Hospital, Al-Khidmat Foundation, Akhuwat, Al-Shifa Trust Eye Hospital, etc. Then under Section 100C, we provide 100% tax credit to PCP approved NPOs in Pakistan involved in charitable and social welfare projects, but again subject to fulfillment of certain conditions. Again, there is a schedule in income tax ordinance that allow credit against the income of donors on donation to certain specified organizations. And there are 60 organizations listed in that schedule. And some of them are Indus Hospital, Karachi, Pakistan Sweet Homes and Angels and Fairies Place, Al-Shifa Trust Eye Hospital, Aziz Taba Foundation, Sindh Institute of Urology and Transplantation, Kidney Center Postgraduate Institute, Pakistan Sable Foundation, Sardar Trust Eye Hospital, etc. Similarly, income of foreign contractors and consultants that come into Pakistan to build certain projects that are sponsored from granting aid money received from abroad are also granted exemption on their income under the income tax ordinance. Similarly, there are charitable hospitals and organizations that are eligible to import tax-free equipment and other material into Pakistan without payment of any tax. So these are ample tax There exist ample tax concessions and exemptions under the income tax ordinance to the organizations that are involved in welfare and charitable work. And if there is any suggestion, FBR will take it into consideration during the next budget exercise for the fiscal year, next fiscal year. Thank you.
Thank you, Naveed sir. Double thanks for saving us time as well. It's been so great. But we would be would like to reach you out, PCP and SDPI, and that how can we nurture this debate at FBR on a more targeted discussion, how to incentivize good giving in Pakistan and how what role FBR can play. We will be reaching you out on this one, that how we can a more systematic and more deeper discussions around it with SDPI and BSP, of course, with caps on board from Hong Kong. With permission of Dr. Amjad Saqib Sahab, sir, with your permission, we believe that nobody is most qualified than you to comment on these issues of good giving. But if you allow me, I'm trying to treat you as a concluding remarks on this session. So if you allow me, I can go to first to Ali Kamal Sahab, and then we can come to you for your comments, which we take as a kind of concluding comments on this one. So thank you so much. So Ali, how do you see it? Much has been said for the government. So we take you in a dual role, sitting at Planning Commission of Pakistan. How is things going on there in this context that you have been listening last around 1 hour? And particularly if you can touch on how important this kind of work and the findings and the discussion around this and the proposals which are coming from our speakers for SDGs agenda itself in terms of your being as a chief SDGs. So over to you, please.
Thank you, Sajid Saab, and thank you, Amjad Saqib Saab. आपको देख के दोबारा खुशी हुई. I'm not turning on my video. I think I have a bad, unstable connection of internet, though I am sitting in Planning Commission, but still. This is a fantastic report, and I really liked it. Especially, at least, I just had a presentation and a 9-page short summary document. I read it, and a note by Dr. Sajid Amin. I remember when I was working, I don't know whether Dr. Shazid Amjad remember or not, because they didn't accept a report because Asad Aman Saab had written it on the individual philanthropy of Pakistan. So I was working on that, and it was a fantastic data and fantastic, what do you call it, the results of that report, which we have computed. But one of the things which I have learned over there, it's not just a monetary philanthropy; it's a non-monetary philanthropy as well. As civil society is working in most of the civil society is working with the community. They are working with money and without money. So I always ask my friends who are working with money with the non-monetary effects on the civil society, that you are the one who are creating awareness among the people. And as Ms. Sabra Qureshi was touching upon on the education and the regulation side, definitely I'll talk to my member as well, who is taking care of education as well. And we are also working with him on these on the out of school children issue. And we already know that BISP has geotagged all the out of school children in 2019, though the data needs to be updated, but at least we have some kind of baseline which we have, and we just need to put them back into the school, though we have COVID and now floods, and we have it is a difficult situation that we can ask them to go to school, go back to schools when there are no schools and when there are no facility when there are no teachers. Coming back to the point, we always say that we are over-regulated country, and that's what we are saying it in the Planning Commission and the CGW meetings loudly, that we are over-regularized and we need to rationalize it. Some regulations are very good, but some regulations are very bad. So the question coming from my fellows now, I'm basically an academician by training, and now I'm sitting on the other side. So they always ask me that what are the action points you can propose. So I don't have any action points at that time. We need to have an action point saying it that there are some regulations bad and there are some good regulations. Is a academic term, and it is a very good term. I like it. But they always ask me what kind of regulations are bad, why they are bad, how can we treat it, and what are the good regulations, and how can we improve further on it. So we need to sit and have the action points ready to rationalize the regulations overall. So this is point number one, or point number two, whatever you call it. I'm very glad that Pakistan is doing okay, and I'm very surprised that Bangladesh is not doing enough. Though they have a very good system of Grameen Bank, Dr. Yunus, and if that is not creating a good social capital, or that is not creating a good philanthropic society, I'm afraid that whether the data is very good or the data has some kind of problems in it. So we need to look into it. I'm not questioning the data, but at the same time, I'm questioning the data. So as far as the SDGs is concerned, my final point, we always say that SDGs has so many stakeholders that the Analote showed us a picture, a Venn diagram, which Dr. Sajid said that is a very simple diagram, but a very difficult thing to implement. We have 7 to 8 circles in it. And then we need to have the combination of those, the A intersection, B intersection, C intersection, D intersection, blah, blah, blah. So those intersections are not possible unless we have a very good coordination mechanism. So in SDGs, we always say that coordination is very important, and coordination is the one where we are lacking. So anyways, but the report, I think, will be a very useful in implementing several of the SDGs which are linked to private sector, government sector, and social sector, where the civil society is working, or even the academia is working. We can use that, and I think I'll stop here, and I'll listen to Dr. Amjad Saqib what he will say in the concluding session. Thank you.
Ali, thank you. Questioning without questioning the data. And I think a good observation, and most probably we may be having answer when we are speaking, next speaker actually. But just I'll leave you with one point, that when you call that coordination as the key challenge, we will come to you that how can SDGs, as a chief custodian of SDGs in Pakistan, your secretariat can help us in what dimension and what context moving forward. So we will be reverting to you. Over to you, sir.
We are with you.
For your comments, please, and thoughts. To you, please.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Thank you very much, sir. I'm extremely grateful to SDPI and PCP for providing all of us with this wonderful and great opportunity to, go through the index of the research and then give our opinions. Maybe something good comes out of it, and we are able to find a, efficient and effective way forward. So after thanking you all, the wonderful talks and the brief comments by everybody, Ms. Sabia, and then Ali Kamal, friend, our trusted friend in, planning division, and David Saab and all, everybody. So I will start with two basic assumptions, basic observations. Number one is, do people give? First of all. So there is no question about it. People give. People believe in giving. We all want to give. We give in, we give money, we give verbal advice, we give some support, we educate people, we encourage people to come out of their daily routine problems, issues. So giving has many faces, and we all give. I can cite the example of recent, two biggest challenges which Pakistan went through. Is one is the COVID-19, and second is the recent floods. So in COVID-19, you can't believe that how much support we received from the people. None of the resident or citizens of Pakistan slept hungry. So there was a great economic shutdown. Businesses were closed, and everything came to standstill. But the entire nation came out and started giving. And quite recently, during these floods, I have witnessed tremendous spirit of giving and solidarity, and this is amazing. I visited almost all 4 provinces. I visited far-flung areas in Sindh, in Balochistan, in KP, in southern Punjab. And I'm not talking of giving by big corporations or corporates or civil society organizations. I'm talking of giving by the ordinary citizens of the cities around which the people were having bad situation. So giving in our habit, if you allow me to talk about Pakistan, and we share our resources, and it is not only a matter of faith, but it is also a very important social obligation. So number one thing is that we give and we want to give. Number two is giving has many ways: institutional giving, giving through corporate social responsibility, giving through international NGOs, giving through government. But I believe in giving by individuals. We hardly evaluate and estimate how much one individual gives to another individual. So we should think of measuring that how much an ordinary person has given to the flood victims during this. Believe me, thousands of people come to our office. Somebody gives money, somebody gives ration packs, somebody gives clothes, somebody gives medicines, somebody just offers that I would like to go to the flood affected areas. So the giving, institutional giving is extremely important, but how should we measure, inspire, and promote this individual giving? So that is the individual giving, the spirit of solidarity shown by the haves, which is in fact the most critical, and that is the vision of a Hoover when we say that we want that 50% Pakistan, which is haves, should be connected to 50% of Pakistan, which is have-nots. So if one person from this section of society adopt or be friends with one person in that section of society which comes under have-nots category, so we can build a better society even without the help of state. So this is, we call the philosophy, that if 4 billion people in this world become friend of 4 billion people who are living less than $2 a day, we still have a better opportunity to build a good world, better world, where every kid goes to school. So we should focus more on individual role, and we should try to find out how it could be promoted, how it could be estimated, and how it could be made the part of the larger system. So these are 2 basic things which I wanted to highlight, that people want to give, and we must not forget the role of an individual to how he or she can be made a part of this larger ecosystem. There are 4 or 5 points, which I think hindering the way people want to give, or the civil society organizations, or community-driven organizations, or not-for-profit organizations work. Number one is, government doesn't believe in partnership. That's simple. We always talk of a partnership between civil society, public and private. We usually say that these are the three pillars in a society: public sector, private sector, and civil society sector. But unless there is a close collaboration, mutual understanding, and a trust between all these partners, we will not be able to achieve our objectives. Government is too big. It is too arrogant. It doesn't believe in accepting that somebody else is also doing some role. Maybe it is smaller role, much less. But at least if we are in a partnership mode, then government should be willing to learn from the people, listen to them, collaborate and cooperate with them. There are many things which government cannot do. So that demands for partnership. But unfortunately, the rules, regulations, and the systems are so difficult within this. I'm not blaming our people working in government, but I think that they are subservient to rules and regulations, and that subservience hinders the innovation and creativity. And that's the reason that we are unable to find a great opportunity of partnership between public, private, and civil society. Number two, poor governance. I'm not talking of poor governance within the government. I'm talking of poor governance within NGOs, within civil society organizations. What does we mean by good governance? Transparency, participation, rule of law, and accountability. So these four things, transparency, participation, rule of law, and accountability, these, I admit, these are lacking in our not-for-profit sector. And this is the reason of lack of trust. Government also doesn't trust because of these reasons. And the people who want to give, they also don't trust because of these reasons. How many of our institutions are absolutely transparent? They get their, audited reports in time, and then SCCP, they are absolutely, registered with SCCP. There are more than 50,000 civil society organizations in Pakistan. So only few of them are registered with SCCP, which is a better regulator. So this is number 2 point for me, that we should improve governance within the social sector. Number 3 is the regulatory regime. So this is suffocating. It is a dilemma that poor governance within the social sector, but the regulatory regime is also very suffocating. There are 4 or 5 different laws under which civil society organizations get registered, but this is very, very difficult. Even to get your bank account opened in a bank by an NGO is a Herculean job. It takes months and months to submit the list of board of directors, list of management, and whatnot. So you are opening a bank account where people are going to contribute, and you are going to complement and supplement the efforts of government. You are, intending to assist government, but government doesn't accept you as a legal entity. So recently, these commissions formed in different provinces. I'm sure you all are aware of those. It's very difficult. They have created an environment which I would say is so suffocating that sometimes we are discouraged that why we are doing this. I have met so many people, they say that it is better to work in any other country than to work in Pakistan because it is so much over-regulated that we are difficult to, work here. Number 4 is their lack of incentives. Government should provide incentive. Government should provide funding. For example, if any organization, XYZ, raises, say 1 billion rupees in terms of money through donations, through, people's collaboration. So if it is according to the, if this organization is absolutely scot-free and trustworthy and fulfills all regulations, then government should also contribute 1 billion rupees. If government can spend money on education and health through its own institutions, why can't it spend money through this partnership if they are able to find good partners? We are told that in West, they are in Europe and many other countries, government comes with counterpart funding to credible organizations that if you are able to raise this much amount and if you are able to spend this much amount with absolute transparency and accountability, we will be sharing. So this will help the social sector to grow. This will help the not-for-profit sector to grow if they have some incentives. Next thing I would like to highlight is the lack of social entrepreneurs in Pakistan. You know, entrepreneurship means innovation. Entrepreneurship means creativity. Entrepreneurship means finding a new way. In fact, entrepreneurship means value addition. So if you have more economic entrepreneurs, you have more economic growth. If you have more social entrepreneurs, you have more contributions in social sector. So this social entrepreneurship should be taught in our universities as a subject, as a discipline, and then that's how we will be able to create leaders for tomorrow, the social leaders for tomorrow, who know how to run a social enterprise. They should be taught all these things: the governance issues, the funding issues, the marketing issues, the financial management issues. So I have never found any institution where social entrepreneurship is taught as a discipline. So if you really want that brilliant people come in education, come in environment, come in poverty alleviation, you are talking, Elisa has talked about SDGs. So if you want to achieve SDGs, then you need best quality leadership. And how can we expect quality leadership without having these disciplines taught in our universities and our schools? So this is my next point. And then, of course, the poor coordination between different, NGOs, not for even in this crisis, these floods. There are plenty of organizations which did wonders. So if I start naming, you'll be amazed. At least 50, 60, 70 organizations raised billions and then spent billions. And they spent this money honestly. But the point is, there is lack of coordination. They are working in the same area, they're working in the same sector, they're working for the same people. There are plenty of people who received support 3, 4, 5, 6 times. And there are plenty of people who were absolutely ignored. So there is a need of a larger database and a platform where the civil society organization share what are they doing, which areas they are working in, which sectors they are working in. And I think in this, with all respect at my command, I will request PCP to design some kind of a relationship, a platform where we call ourselves their society NGOs are their partners, because they examine our systems and if they are satisfied, they certify us. So we would like them to play a key role in this, that if they can ask the NGOs working in health, NGOs working in education, NGOs working in rural development, NGOs working in poverty alleviation, NGOs working in environment, or NGOs working for the disabilities. So if such groups can be created and there is a collaboration or sharing of experiences between them, that will help us to speak that what hinders us and what facilitates us. So that maybe that's not a formal structure, but even informally, we will be able to share many thoughts and ideas. So that's my last point. I don't want to say much because time is short. But let me say at the in the end that poverty, of course, poverty is pain, and poverty is poison. We cannot live happily if our neighbors are not happy. How can we, make this world a better place to live in if 20 million children are not going to school? If I have dreams, the poor people have also dreams. Now the question is how we all can work to achieve these dreams as a public sector, as a private sector, as a community-driven organization, and the role we all can together play will ultimately, determine the destiny of a whole world. And peace cannot be achieved unless we want to share, we learn to share. Reciprocity of economy, that is the most important thing. And this we call mawakhat, and this we call solidarity. That if 50% are willing to establish a bond of love and care and friendship with the 50% who are less privileged, don't make them beggars. We cannot end poverty by giving doles and charities. We can end poverty by making the poor or underprivileged as our friends. Become their friends. That is the only way to eliminate their poverty. So that's all. And we are working for this. You all are working for this. Let's hope and dream that one day we will be able to reach our goal. Thank you very much.
So thank you so much for putting it so simply, so doable. So nice of you on that one privileged holding the hand of one unprivileged. So it's so simple solutions, and we see that you have been working, and we see the success that you have been. And I think you have made two very important points that for CAPS actually. And the good point is I see in the intervention of Saqib Saab and Analytics, there is almost super overlapping on challenging issues and the solutions. They exactly overlap. But I think with two additional points which are coming from Saqib Saab is very important. One is the individual givings, how we can bring them in. Maybe CAPS can think next, moving forward in our next round. And also the CSOs which are not registered with SDPI, which are informal, undocumented. So I think these are two very important points. And one common point across all the speakers, all the presentations, and all the conversation is the coordination. That this is nothing possible without a well-coordinated effort. And I think it will be good to see maybe in the next report a specific section or chapter on it. How can we, in a forward-looking context, that how we can build a coordination on this one. This is now time for question and answer. Yes, can we take question and then we can come to you and you can club together. So any questions, please, and comments. We can have only 3 questions and comments. Please, your name and your question, sir.
जी मेरा नाम खालिद है और मैं एक एनजीओ का जो वाइस प्रेसिडेंट हूँ और इतने मसाइल आए कि मैंने उसको पीछे छोड़ दिया तो मैं आपसे शेयर करता हूँ अगर ये हमारे कुछ शेयर कर सके
बस ये रखिएगा टाइम हमारे पास 1 मिनट है सो प्लीज 1 मिनट में आप जो शेयर कर सकते हैं
पेशेंट वेलफेयर से या मैं दिल से बात करना इसमें बात करूंगा आपके पास टाइम नहीं है
दैट इज एक्सीलेंट आइडिया बट आप यू कैन ब्रिंग अ समरी
मैं इनसे बात
बट यू कैन गिव अ समरी
समरी ये है कि उसमें मैं पेशेंट वेलफेयर का वाइस प्रेसिडेंट था बीबीआई में ये बेस्ड है हम वो पेशेंट जो हमारे होते हैं हॉस्पिटल में आते हैं जिनके पैसे वैसे नहीं होते हैं उनकी हेल्प करते हैं अनफॉर्चुनेटली पिछले 2019 से मैं इसको एक्टिव करने की कोशिश कर रहा हूँ ये हमारी एक्टिव नहीं हो रही तरह की प्रॉब्लम्स आ रही हैं हमारा अकाउंट भी हबीब बैंक में था उसमें काफी पैसे पड़े हुए हैं लेकिन अनफॉर्चुनेटली सारे डॉक्यूमेंट्स प्रोवाइड करने के बावजूद हबीब बैंक ने कहा जी वो 6 माह के बाद हमारे डॉक्यूमेंट्स वापस आएंगे जी नहीं पता नहीं क्या हो गया क्या नहीं हो गया तो इस मैं मैडम से शेयर करूँगा शायद ये हमारी हेल्प करे और हम लोग
जी जरूर प्लीज one more question we can take and then we can move to Shazia sir. Generally, don't ask question 2 times. या तो हमें सब समझ आया होता है या हमें कुछ समझ नहीं आया होता. We can take one online question and then I'll move to Shaji Saiba, sort of concluding.
Responding to some comments.
Exactly, but I think we have to give hall to another session actually. Can we have a question from online? जी या अगर पढ़ सकें यहाँ पे जो इनके सामने है question. Can somebody read from the chat box? Omar, you can stand and read.
Indeed, the point raised by Mr. Veera on bureaucracy rigidity is very valid. How can this challenge be addressed?
We couldn't find 70 years in this answer that how we can make bureaucracy more flexible. It's really difficult to answer in 1 minute, but really important point. This is 70 years we have been discussing actually. So over to you for your last intervention, please. 2 minutes.
Thank you so much. I thought it was pertinent to come in because there were 2 comments relating to the. First of all, I must thank Mr. Sakitsab. I think the enabling environment overview, the 5-6 bullet points that you put across, I think it's very pertinent, very comprehensive. I think all need to be addressed and looked at very carefully. With regard to the coordination role of PCP, I'm just sitting here. I was already talking to my colleagues that we must go and have a chat with you and see how we can really do this. So this is something that we were cognizant ourselves, because in times of floods, people were asking us. We even circulated organizations that were working in the flood affected areas in Pakistan, but there was no mechanism whereby we could tell where was duplication and how perhaps things could be harmonized. So I think this would be a real contribution if we can think it through with you and see how we can really take this forward. I think this is very pertinent and very much right up our alley. So we'll seek time from you definitely in the coming weeks. There was a comment by Ali Kamal Saab regarding the study that we had done with Asad Zaman Saab. So let me tell you that that study did happen. The Asad Zaman draft was strengthened further by the LUMS team. It was actually the LUMS economics departments that took a lead on it. And we completed that study reporting 240 billion, which is an underestimate by any standards, because we could not individual level giving. And this study was launched in 2016. So we are currently, and I also wanted to apprise the people in the room here and our panel that we are undertaking a study for the very first time. Dr. Adil Najam is the lead author on it. And the study is called Compendium on the State of Philanthropy in Pakistan. So it will not just only look at one element of giving, but it will be looking at different elements of giving, which is, we are doing a 12,000 household level survey to determine individual level giving. So we'll be looking at corporate giving. We'll also be looking at diaspora giving. We'll be also looking at high net worth giving. We will also be looking at what you spoke about, the institutional level giving that is happening. And we will try and estimate the question that you asked earlier on in your comments, that how much, what is the estimate and the level of giving. So that is the big question that we would attempt to answer. I think this study is aimed to be launched in 2024. So we have time. If there are any contributions, anything that you would like to add here, we would be more than happy to have that conversation with you. We'll also looking at, we'll be looking at the quantum, the volume, the percentage of giving to Pakistan's GDP. We will also do a last chapter on the enabling environment, the different factors that you've spoken about, the challenges that actually hinder giving and its utilization and its effectiveness in Pakistan, and to see how this can be improved, so giving a future strategy as well. So I think this is something that will be looked at very comprehensively for the very first time in Pakistan. So I just wanted to apprise participants of what is going on in terms of research on philanthropy at Pakistan Center for Philanthropy. Thank you.
Thank you. Very exciting work lined up. I'm given 3 minutes for conclusion and vote of thanks, but I'll be giving 1 minute to Annalete if she has something pressing to say, and then I'll conclude the session. So anything that you would like to add? 1 minute, please.
I would like to express thanks to all the speakers for their insights they shared. I think it really helped both confirm, I think, the findings that we found with our data, but also give some more detailed kind of guidance on what can actually be done. And those points for in the enabling environment, I think, are very aligned with what we are seeing, but give a very practical advice. So thank you. I think this is, I think there's a lot here to take forward. And we also welcome the opportunity to continue this conversation with any of you and to share more further detail if that is needed. So I really am grateful for the additional insights, and I think it really paints a full picture on what's the opportunity and the need.
Thank you, Annalete, and my vote of thanks. Let me begin by you also. Big thanks to you for joining us. A very excellent presentation, and we look forward to see you in Hong Kong, maybe in February, most probably. My thanks to Shazia Maksud Sahiba, Executive Director of PCP, for joining with SDPI to hold this sort of event. Would have not been possible. We are lazy, so you have been continuously pushing up. Thank you so much. And to my excellent speakers, Mohammad Amjad Saqib Sahab, Chairman of Howard, a household name in Pakistan, Mr. Ali Kamal, Chief SDGs, Saibra Qureshi Saiba, Founder, Managing Trustee JAK Education Trust, and finally, Mr. Naveed Mukhtar Saab, Secretary Income Tax from FBR. And to all of you, big thanks for sitting with us and saving our time by not asking the questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you.